Have you ever held something so precious, so fragile, that you were terrified to even breathe on it for fear it would shatter? You cradle it, you protect it, you pour every ounce of your being into it, believing that if you just love it enough, it will never break. But sometimes, the things we hold most dear aren't shattered by a sudden blow. They don't break from the outside in. They are eroded, slowly, quietly, from the inside out, by the very hands we trust to hold them. It starts with a whisper, a small pulling away, a look that doesn't hold the same light. And by the time you realize the damage is done, you're left holding empty air, clutching the ghost of a bond that you built with your own two hands. You're left with a hole inside you that has the exact shape of a person who is still breathing, still walking around, but who is no longer yours. That's a pain that doesn't just hurt, it calcifies. It becomes a part of you, a phantom limb that aches on cold, quiet nights. And it's from that ache that the most terrible, and sometimes the most necessary, decisions are born. This story, though, it's not about simple pain. It's about what happens when love, a love so deep it feels like part of your own soul, is met with something that feels a whole lot like betrayal. It's a story about a man, a good man, who had to ask himself a question that no father or grandfather should ever have to ask. What do you do when the person you built your whole world for decides they don't want you in it anymore? Before we get to that, you need to know the bedrock. You need to understand the foundation, because that's where the real story lies. Our man is Victor. Victor Castelli. If you were to meet Victor, you'd see a man who looks like he was carved from the very same Florida limestone he worked with for 40 years. His hands are thick, calloused, the kind of hands that have known the weight of a sledgehammer and the delicate precision of setting a cornerstone. He's a man of few words, but the words he speaks are heavy with the weight of a life lived honestly. He's got a gentle smile, a bit lopsided, that crinkles the corners of his eyes. It's the kind of smile that makes you feel like everything's gonna be okay, even when the sky is falling. Victor's story really began on a stormy night in April, a long, long time ago. The rain was hammering against the windows of his little house in Sarasota. He was a younger man then, but the weight of the world was already on his shoulders. He'd just gotten the call that every parent dreads. His only son, Thomas, a boy with a laugh as big as the Florida sky, was gone. A car accident. Just like that. The phone slipped from Victor's hand, and a sound came out of him that he'd never heard before, a sound that belonged to a wounded animal. It was the sound of his world ending. He had to be strong, though. He had to be the rock for his daughter-in-law, Diana. And most importantly, for little Leo. Leo was just a toddler then, a tiny little boy with his father's deep brown eyes and a shock of unruly black hair. When Victor walked into the house, Leo was sitting on the floor, trying to fit a square block into a round hole. He looked up, his face a map of confusion. "Where's Daddy?" he'd asked, his voice small and fragile. And that's when Victor felt it. A surge of something so powerful, so primal, it knocked the wind out of him. A sacred and profound duty. It wasn't just love. It was a vow. A promise he made right there in the silence of his son's absence. He would be the sun that Leo orbited around. He would be the fortress walls that kept the world out. He would be everything. In those early years, Victor and Diana were a team, bound together by grief and by their mutual love for that little boy. But grief is a strange thing. It can bring people together, or it can push them apart. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, a wedge began to form. Victor was a simple man. He was happy with a cup of strong coffee, a good fishing rod, and the sound of his grandson's laughter. He'd take Leo to the pier, teaching him how to cast a line. He'd spend hours in the garage, showing him how to use tools, how to fix things. He taught him that a man's word was his bond, that you treat people with kindness and respect, and that you never, ever walk away from the people who love you. Victor gave Leo something more than just his time. He gave him financial security. He wasn't a wealthy man, not by any stretch of the imagination. But he was smart, and he was frugal. He scrimped and saved. He passed on vacations. He drove his old truck for 25 years. He skipped the morning pastry. Every single penny he could squeeze out of his modest retirement savings, he put away. It was in a special account. The Leo Fund, he called it in his head. He built it up, little by little, dollar by dollar, over 18 years. It was his gift to the future, a ticket for his grandson to go anywhere and be anyone he wanted to be. It was his way of continuing to build a life for the boy, even when he was gone. It was his final promise to his son, a legacy carved in stone and secured in a bank vault. Diana, on the other hand. Diana had different dreams. She was a woman of ambition. She saw the world not as a place to be part of, but as a place to be conquered. As Leo grew older, she started to resent Victor's influence. She felt his old-fashioned values were holding Leo back. She didn't want her son learning how to fix a leaky faucet, she wanted him learning how to be a CEO. She started making remarks about Victor's simple life as if it were a choice between ignorance and sophistication. When Leo was around 10, Diana met a new man. A man named Robert. Robert was a high flyer, a big-shot developer who wore expensive suits and drove a car that cost more than Victor's house. Robert was everything Victor was not. He was slick, charming, and had a way of making things seem like they were your idea, even when he was maneuvering you right where he wanted you. For the first few years, Robert seemed decent enough. He'd nod politely at Victor. He never got into a heated argument. He was just always there, slowly, quietly, taking over. He'd start coming to Leo's baseball games. Then he'd be the one taking Leo to the batting cages. Victor was slowly, meticulously, being edged out of the picture. The official takeover wasn't announced with a bang. It was a slow, painful process, like watching a film of your life being erased. The Sunday dinners at Victor's house became less frequent. Then they stopped altogether. Diana started making excuses. Oh, Leo has a lot of homework. Oh, Robert is taking us on a little getaway. The phone calls from Leo became shorter and shorter. Then, they became a chore. Victor could see Leo changing, turning from the earnest, thoughtful boy he'd raised into a quieter, more reserved version of himself. It was the change of a kid who was trying to please two different worlds, a kid who was slowly learning that his grandfather's world wasn't the one that promised him everything he thought he wanted. The final blow, the one that truly splintered Victor's heart into 1,000 pieces, came 1 month before Leo's graduation. Victor had been planning for this moment for years. The graduation. He'd buy a new suit, the best he could afford, just for the occasion. He'd be in the front row, bursting with pride, his heart swelling so much it might just pop right out of his chest. He had a special gift. Something that wasn't just a check, but a symbol. A beautifully engraved leather-bound copy of The Little Prince, a book he'd read to Leo 100 times when he was small. Inside, he had carefully written, "To my Leo, the most important things in life are invisible to the eye. They are found in the heart. Always remember where your roots are. Love, Grandpa." He had tucked a smaller, more practical gift inside the cover as a surprise. One evening, the call came. It wasn't Leo. It was Diana. "Victor," she said, her voice crisp and businesslike, like she was scheduling a dentist appointment. "I just wanted to call and officially let you know. The graduation ceremony is going to be a bit of an intimate affair. We're having a small, private dinner afterwards for family. At the country club, of course. The seating is limited." The pause stretched out between them, thick and heavy. "Of course, Diana," Victor had said, his voice calm, despite the sudden tightness in his chest. "I understand. I'll just sit in the back. I don't want to cause any trouble." "That's just it, Victor," she sighed, the sound dripping with a false pity that was worse than anger. "Leo doesn't want to be embarrassed. Robert has been a real father figure to him, and he's taking his stepfather's name for the ceremony. It would be awkward for you to be there. He's come so far, Victor. He's building a new life. A successful life. He doesn't need the reminders of the past." The silence on Victor's end was deafening. He felt the floor drop out from under him. He clung to the kitchen counter, his knuckles white, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. "You're telling me," Victor's voice was barely a whisper, a ghost of its usual gravelly warmth. "You're telling me I can't come to my own grandson's graduation? The one I've been saving for his whole life? The one I planned for him? It's what's best for Leo, Victor. You need to let go. You need to accept that he's moving on. He's a man now. And this is what he wants." "I need to hear it from him," Victor had said, the words tasting like dust and ashes. "Put him on the phone." Diana had sighed again, a master of performance. "Oh, all right. Leo. Your grandfather wants to speak with you." There was a long pause, a shuffling sound, and then Leo's voice came on the line. But it wasn't the voice of the boy Victor had raised. It was a hollow echo. "Hey, Grandpa." Victor's throat was so tight he could barely get the words out. "Leo, son. I don't understand. What's going on?" "I'm sorry, Grandpa," Leo muttered, the words sounding rehearsed, empty. "It's just easier this way. You know, for everyone. Robert is taking me to the dinner. He's got a lot of important people coming. It's a whole big thing. So, that's it? Your mother tells me I'm not welcome, and that's that? You're just okay with that? After everything, you're just going to let her shut me out? It's not like that, Grandpa. It's just complicated. You wouldn't understand. That was the moment. The moment Victor realized he was talking to a ghost. The boy he loved was gone, replaced by a stranger who had learned to prioritize comfort over loyalty, convenience over love. The words "it's just easier this way" had been a knife, sharp and cold, expertly plunged into his back. The one person he'd lived for, the one person he'd planned his entire future around, was choosing silence over standing by him. Victor didn't say another word. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't try to argue. He simply hung up the phone. He stood there in his silent kitchen, staring at the wall, for what felt like hours. The silence was broken only by the ticking of the old grandfather clock his wife had loved. It was a sound of finality. The next morning, Victor woke up a different man. The gentle smile was gone. The warmth in his eyes was replaced by something harder, something forged in the fires of a deep, profound hurt. He put on his best, slightly threadbare, suit. He walked into the bank, a pillar of a building that had known him for 30 years. He was greeted by a young teller who knew him by name. "Good morning, Mr. Castelli. What can we do for you today?" Victor's voice was quiet, calm. There wasn't a trace of anger in it. It was simply the sound of a man who had made a decision. "I need to close the account. The college fund." The teller's face fell. "Oh, Mr. Castelli, are you sure? That's a lot of money. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," Victor said, a small, tight smile appearing on his face. "Everything's just fine. I just need it all. In a cashier's check. Make it out to cash." He watched as she printed the check, the balance of $40,039 displayed on the computer screen. It was the sum total of 18 years of his life, 18 years of sacrifice. It was a lifetime of love. He held the check in his hand. It felt like nothing, just a slip of paper. But it represented everything he had. The graduation day was a sweltering June afternoon. The Florida sun beat down on the rows and rows of folding chairs in the high school football stadium. The air was thick with the smell of cut grass, cheap perfume, and nervous anticipation. Victor arrived early. He wasn't in the main stands. He found a spot in the very back, in the shade of a large oak tree, as far from the ceremonial center as he could get. He sat on the metal bleachers, alone, a solitary figure against the sea of happy families. He watched the procession of young men and women in their blue and white caps and gowns. He watched the sea of parents, grandparents, siblings, friends, all of them holding their phones up to capture the moment. He saw Diana and Robert in the front row, a picture-perfect family. Robert was wearing a ridiculously expensive suit, looking every bit the proud stepfather. And there, in the middle of it all, was Leo. Victor's heart lurched. He saw the boy he'd raised, the boy with his son's eyes. He saw him smiling, shaking hands with the principal. The speech, the cheering, the waving of the diploma. It was a moment of triumph, a moment of pure, unadulterated pride. But for Victor, it was a hollow victory. He wasn't part of it. He was an outsider, an unwanted ghost at the feast. He watched the crowd surge forward to greet the graduates. The hugging, the tears, the joyful screams. He watched Diana and Robert embrace Leo. He saw the pride on their faces. He saw Leo's eyes scanning the crowd, a flicker of something almost like guilt before he turned away. Victor stood up slowly. He felt stiff, old. He felt every single one of his 73 years. He held the cashier's check and the leather-bound book in his hand. He had a plan. He wasn't exactly sure how it would play out, but he knew he had to do something. The crowd was a swirling, chaotic sea of joy. Victor had to navigate through it, walking against the current. He was looking for one of the graduates. He didn't know her name, but he'd seen her. Earlier, during the ceremony, he had noticed a young woman. She was a small thing, with black hair tied back in a neat bun, and a quiet, dignified air about her. During the calling of the names, when the crowd erupted for everyone else, there was no cheer for her. No one had stood up. No one had shouted her name. She had walked across the stage alone, a single figure, head held high, accepting her diploma to a silence that had made Victor's chest ache. She had sat in the section designated for graduates, and he'd seen her look at the families, her face impassive, but a deep, quiet loneliness in her eyes. He saw her now, standing near the concession stand, holding her diploma, looking lost in the celebration. She was clutching a small, worn leather bag to her chest, her only visible possession. She had no one. Victor walked up to her. He was breathing heavily, not from exertion, but from the sheer weight of what he was about to do. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice gruff. The young woman looked up, startled. She had a sweet face, tired but kind. "Yes, sir?" "My name is Victor," he said. "I couldn't help but notice you. You gave a very fine speech at the ceremony, didn't you?" She looked down, a flush of embarrassment coloring her cheeks. I just read what was written." "It was a fine speech," he repeated. "Moved me, it did. A young woman who's going places." "Thank you, sir," she said, a puzzled smile on her face. He looked around. The crowd was starting to thin. Diana was nowhere to be seen. The moment was now. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the cashier's check. He held it out to her. "I have something for you." The woman, Maria, looked at the piece of paper, her eyes widening in shock as she read the amount. I don't understand. What is this?" Victor smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "It's a gift. A little something to help you get started in life. My grandson, he's got a whole world of people looking out for him. But it seems to me, a child who crosses the stage all alone, who makes her own way. That child is the one who understands loyalty the most. That child deserves a ticket to her future. This is for you, for what you've built on your own." Maria stared at him, tears welling in her eyes. "I can't accept this," she whispered, shaking her head. "This is too much. This is a mistake." "It's no mistake," Victor said firmly. He pressed the check into her trembling hand. He then gave her the leather-bound book. "This is for you too. It's a reminder that the things that matter most are the things you can't see with your eyes. You're on your own, now. This is just to help you along the way." Before Maria could say another word, Victor turned and walked away. He had to deliver his final message. He saw Diana and Robert heading towards the parking lot. He saw Leo with them, looking over his shoulder, still scanning the crowd. Victor walked toward them. His footsteps were heavy, determined, each one a hammer blow on the pavement. He didn't look at Leo. He looked straight at Diana. He stopped a few feet away. Diana's face, which had been glowing with smug satisfaction, froze. Her eyes narrowed. Robert looked uncomfortable. "I just wanted to say," Victor began, his voice deep and resonant. He deliberately spoke loud enough for the people nearby, some of the other parents and graduates milling about, to hear him. "I just wanted to say, Diana, that I wish Leo all the success in the world. I really do. But I want you to know something." He paused for a moment, letting the silence hang in the air. He could feel Leo's eyes on him, wide with a dawning horror. He could see the confusion and curiosity of the other parents. "I spent 18 years of my life," Victor continued, his voice unwavering. 18 years, building a world for my grandson. I saved, I sacrificed, I gave him everything I had. I gave him a foundation. A foundation of love, of loyalty, of knowing that he was never alone. I gave him the world, because I believed he would always be there for me. But I've learned today that the world you give someone, the love you give them, doesn't mean a thing to them if they're too busy looking elsewhere." Diana's face was a mask of pure fury. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "The check," Victor said, his voice now a low, calm rumble. "The college fund I was saving for Leo. I just gave it away. A moment ago. To a beautiful young woman who walked across that stage all by herself. A girl with no one cheering for her, but with a heart full of grit and determination." He looked at Leo now, looked straight into those familiar eyes. "Because, son," Victor said, his voice softening, but with a sharp edge of disappointment, "that girl deserved it more. She knows what it means to stand alone. She knows the value of what you build on your own. I gave you my legacy, Leo, but you chose to throw it away. You thought the world owed you something. But it doesn't. It's the people who are willing to earn it, who are willing to fight for it, who truly understand its value." He turned back to Diana. "So there you have it. The poor man's pride you were so worried about. It's gone. It's going to someone who needs it. Someone who will actually appreciate it." The color drained from Diana's face. The smug satisfaction was replaced by a look of utter shock and rage. The other parents, who had been watching the exchange, were silent. Some of them had looks of sympathy for Victor. Others had looks of utter contempt for Diana and the cowering Leo. The whispers began. "Can you believe that woman? What did she do to that poor man? She cut him out, I heard. That boy, just standing there. It's disgusting." The words floated around them, sharp and judgmental. Diana, for the first time, looked utterly exposed. Victor didn't wait for a response. He simply turned around, tipped his cap to the people watching, and walked away. He walked out of the stadium, out of their lives, leaving behind a trail of smoke, of questions, and of a profound, unshakable sense of justice. The drive home was quiet. Victor felt an immense weight lift from his shoulders, a feeling of icy relief, but also a hollow emptiness. He had done it. He had taken a stand. He had proven his point. He had repaid their indifference with a powerful, public act of charity. He had given his precious gift to a stranger, a quiet, lonely girl, who was more deserving. It felt righteous, and it felt necessary. It felt like the only way he could make sense of the senseless hurt. He had shown them the power of a man scorned. The next few years were a blur. Victor returned to his quiet life. He took care of his small garden. He went fishing. He avoided the news. He refused to dwell on the past. He had accepted his fate. He was an old man now, living out his days in the peaceful solitude he had built for himself. But there was a part of him, a deep, quiet part, that was still waiting. Waiting for the echo of the life he had once known. One afternoon, 3 years after that fateful graduation day, Victor was sitting on his porch, sipping a glass of sweet tea and listening to the cicadas. He heard a car pull up in his gravel driveway. A dusty, sensible sedan. He didn't get many visitors. He looked up, curious. A young woman stepped out of the car. She was dressed in simple, professional clothes, a pair of navy slacks and a white blouse. She looked different. She looked radiant. She looked like she had found her place in the world. Victor squinted. There was something familiar about her. "Can I help you, miss?" he asked, his voice hoarse. The woman walked up the steps, a nervous smile on her face. She held out her hand. "Mr. Castelli? Victor Castelli?" "Yes," he said slowly, taking her hand. "That's me." "My name is Maria," she said. "Maria Hernandez. You don't remember me, do you?" Victor studied her face. The black hair, the quiet dignity. And then it hit him. "The graduation," he breathed. "The girl. The quiet girl. You're the nurse?" She smiled, and her smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "I am now. I just graduated from nursing school. I'm a registered nurse." Victor felt a lump form in his throat. "I see," he said, his voice thick. That's wonderful. Maria sat down in the chair next to him. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "Mr. Castelli, I know this isn't much, but I've been saving. I wanted to give you something back. It's not everything, but it's what I could afford." She handed him the envelope. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a cashier's check for $10,000. "I can't take this," Victor said, shaking his head, pushing it back towards her. "That was a gift, Maria. It was given freely. It was meant for you." "Mr. Castelli," Maria said, her voice firm but filled with gratitude. "You changed my life. That money. It didn't just pay for my education. It gave me hope. It taught me that someone, a complete stranger, believed in me. It made me work harder than I ever thought possible. I wouldn't be where I am today without you." Victor looked at the check. He didn't see the money. He saw the reflection of his own act of defiance, now transformed into something beautiful. A cycle of giving had been created. "And there's something else," Maria said, a soft light in her eyes. "I'm getting married next month. He's a good man. He's a teacher. And I don't have any family to speak of. I mean, I have my mother in Mexico, but she couldn't make the trip. I'm going to be all alone at the altar." Victor felt a warmth spread through his chest. He understood what she was asking. "I was wondering," Maria continued, her voice trembling. "Would you do me the honor of walking me down the aisle? Would you be my family? You gave me my future, and I would be so honored if you could be a part of my new beginning." Victor was speechless. The hard shell he had built around his heart cracked. Tears, which he hadn't shed in years, welled up in his eyes. This young woman, this stranger he had chosen on a whim, was offering him the one thing he had lost, the feeling of being needed, of being family. He reached out and took her hand. "It would be my honor, Maria," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It would be my absolute honor." A few weeks later, Victor was preparing for the wedding. His heart was full of a joy he had long forgotten. It was the pure, unadulterated joy of being loved. And then, a dark cloud appeared on the horizon. His phone rang. He picked it up. It was a number he didn't recognize. "Hello? Grandpa?" The voice was cracked, barely a whisper. "It's me. It's Leo." Victor's heart lurched. He sat down heavily in his chair. "Leo," he said, his voice neutral, trying to process the shock. "How are you?" I messed up, Grandpa." Leo's voice was filled with shame and defeat. Everything fell apart. The college fund, it was Robert's money in the end, you know that? He made me sign a contract. He promised to pay for my education as a gift, but he had strings attached. He made me work at his company for a year first, a low-level job. I hated it. I couldn't hack it. I got into an argument with his son about something stupid, and he cut me off. The money stopped. I had to drop out. I can't get a good job without a degree. I'm working at a department store. Mom and I don't talk anymore. Robert. He left her. He filed for divorce 6 months ago." Victor listened to the sound of his grandson's life crumbling. He heard the despair in his voice. He heard the crushing weight of his own mistakes. "I was so stupid," Leo sobbed. "I was so selfish. I thought I had it all figured out. I thought Robert was the key to everything, and I threw away the only person who ever really loved me. You. I'm so sorry, Grandpa. I'm so sorry for everything. For the graduation. For the phone call. For being a coward. I need you. I have nothing. Please, Grandpa. Please help me." The silence between them was thick and heavy. Victor felt the weight of all the years of hurt. He felt the phantom pain of a broken bond. He felt the bitterness and the disappointment. But he also felt something else. The love. The love he had tried to bury. It was still there, buried deep but still alive. He took a deep breath. He thought of Leo as a little boy, holding his hand. He thought of the promise he'd made to his son on that stormy night. He thought of the lesson he'd learned, not just from his own pain, but from the example of Maria, the girl who had turned a gift into a legacy of love and gratitude. He thought about what he'd learned from the whole terrible, beautiful mess. He'd taken his revenge, yes. He'd had his moment in the sun, his public triumph. But had it really changed anything? It had made him feel righteous, but it hadn't filled the hole in his heart. It had only brought a hollow sort of satisfaction, a cold comfort. It didn't bring Leo back. It didn't erase the years of loss. Now, his grandson was calling him, broken and alone. The boy who had cast him aside was now begging for the very love he'd thrown away. "Leo," Victor said, his voice weary but kind. "I love you. I have always loved you, and I will always love you. That will never, ever change. It's the one thing that's absolute in this entire world." Leo sobbed with relief. "Oh, thank you, Grandpa. Thank you. I'll do better, I promise. I'll come and live with you. I'll make it right." "No, son," Victor said, his voice gentle but firm. "You can't do that." Leo's sobbing stopped. "What?" "Leo," Victor said, "I gave you a ticket to the future, and you chose a different path. I'm not punishing you, son. I'm just telling you the truth. You have to learn the value of loyalty, not because someone told you to, but because you felt the pain of having none." "But Grandpa, I can't do it. I don't have anything. I have no one. You have to help me." "I am helping you," Victor said. "I'm helping you by telling you the hardest thing anyone has ever told you. I can't buy your love, Leo. I can't pay for your loyalty. I offered it to you for free, for 18 years, and you walked away. You must rebuild. You must make something of your own. That's the only way you will ever truly understand its value." He heard Leo's crying, but he didn't cave. He let his grandson feel the weight of his actions. "I will always be here for you, son," Victor said, his voice cracking. "I will always love you. When you have something to show me, something you've built on your own, I will welcome you home with open arms. But you have to do the work. You have to stand on your own 2 feet. That's the only way you'll ever be the man I know you can be." He hung up the phone. The silence in the room was profound. Victor felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The act of love he had just performed was the hardest thing he had ever done. It was a love that said no, a love that chose the difficult path of letting go, rather than the easy path of blind rescue. He thought about what he'd learned. He had thought his revenge, his act of public justice, would heal him. He thought that giving the money to Maria would make him whole. But it hadn't. It had just been a stopgap. A bandage on a gaping wound. The real healing had begun the moment he sat down with Maria and saw the beauty of her gratitude. And it was being completed now, in this quiet conversation with his grandson. He was still disappointed. A part of him would always be disappointed. But he had let go of the anger. He wasn't holding on to the bitterness anymore. He had replaced it with a quiet, melancholic hope. He had given Leo the only thing he could really give him now, the truth. And the truth, as painful as it was the most loving gift of all. That night, Victor sat on his porch, staring at the stars. He was an old man, a man who had spent his life building things, only to watch his most important work crumble. But he had learned something. He had learned that the love you give is never wasted. It might be ignored, it might be thrown away, but it still exists. It still has power. It can still echo forward, changing lives in ways you can never imagine. He thought about Maria. She was a shimmering star on the horizon of his life, a brilliant example of the good that could come from the ashes of his pain. She was his family now. She had earned it. And he thought about Leo. He hoped, with all his heart, that Leo would one day find his own way. That he would learn the lessons Victor had tried so hard to teach him. That he would finally understand that the most important things in life are invisible. They can't be bought. They can't be inherited. They can only be earned. Victor learned that sometimes, the most powerful act of justice isn't revenge. It's not making someone feel the pain they caused you. No, the most powerful act of justice is giving someone else the love they rejected. It's taking your broken heart and turning it into a foundation for someone else's hope. It's becoming a bridge for a stranger, and in doing so, finding your own way back home. The story doesn't end with a bang. It doesn't end with a reunion or a tearful apology. It ends with a quiet, profound truth. Victor had built a life for his grandson. He had tried to be the sun in his sky. But in the end, he realized he had to let the boy find his own sun. He had to let him walk his own path. And he had learned that the greatest gift you can give anyone, especially yourself, is the freedom to choose your own way, and the courage to stand by your own choices, even when they lead you to the most unexpected places. It's a lesson that was written not in the pages of a book, but in the heart of a man who had the courage to love, even when it broke him. He had taken his revenge. He had won his battle. But the real victory, the one that really mattered, was the victory over his own bitterness, and the quiet strength he found in learning to let go. He finally understood that the path to peace wasn't paved with getting even, it was paved with letting go.